Hey guys, this is Will at Third and Long. Today we are going to be breaking down the Pac-12's win-loss record for every single team in the conference for the 2023 football season. Hit that like button and subscribe. The website that we are going to be using for today is the kforwardratings.com website. The reason that I specifically picked that website is because it gives you the schedule for every team, gives you what they are projected to win, what their losses should be, and what their national ratings are for the overall team for offense, defense, and strength of schedule. And this is kind of a shame because this is the very last year that we will be looking at the Pac-12 as we know it. But there's a lot of teams, so let's get started. And the way this website is kind of set up, we are looking at USC right now. On the very top right-hand corner, we have the win-loss record, and then the national rankings off to the right there, and at the very bottom where they rank strength of schedule. So let's get started with USC. Week 1, San Jose State, they just played that. They were obviously going to blow them out. That's a win. Nevada, that's a win. Stanford, win. Arizona State, win. Colorado, primetime coming to Colorado. That's a win. Arizona, win. Notre Dame, I think that's going to be a tough game. That should be a top 10 matchup for both teams. I'm actually going for the upset there. I think Notre Dame will beat USC. Utah beat them 2 times last year. I don't think it's going to happen a third time. I think USC will beat Utah this year. At Cal, I think USC will beat Cal. Win at Washington. That's going to be a shootout. That'll be a really great game to watch. Could be a top 10 matchup too. But I think USC will beat Washington. At Oregon, another potential top 10 matchup. Oregon's a tough team, very physical team. If I had to put money on it right now, though, I think the Trojans will beat the Ducks. And UCLA, Chip Kelly's team, I think USC will beat them. So I have USC going 11-1, losing to Notre Dame. Now, Lincoln Riley has a really good team here. Caleb Williams is obviously going for back-to-back Heisman campaigns. It's only been done once. The big question, we know what the offense will do. Alex Grinch needs to get that defense right. Because when you look at their national ratings, they have them projected going 10-2, the 8th overall team, offense, second best offense, defense 54. They're way worse than that, with a number 49 strength of schedule. At the end of the day, no matter what Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley do, that defense just has to get average. They just have to get respectable. This team could have won a national championship last year if they just had a average to below average defense. But their defense was historically awful. So Alex Grinch, they had a great transfer portal class. The D-line is completely redone. They better show fruits of all that work. But I have them going 11-1. That's based off of them having a improved defense. If not, I see potential upsets at Washington and Oregon. Next team that we're going to be looking at is, of course, the Oregon Ducks. They have them going 9-3, 13th overall team, offense 5, defense 44, strength of schedule 50. Dan Lanning has a pretty good team here. He has Bo Nix back at quarterback. He's another Heisman contender. The Pac-12 is loaded with Heisman contenders this year, but let's get started on the breakdown. Starting out the year at Portland State, I think that's a win. At Texas Tech, win. That's a pretty good out-of-conference game, though. Hawaii, win. Colorado, win. At Stanford, win. So right now, they're 5-0. I have them at Washington. I have them losing that game. As of right now, losing to the Washington Huskies. And then they follow that up, Washington State, win. Utah, win. Cal, win. USC, I have that as a loss as of right now. And then finishing at the year, win at Arizona State and a win at Oregon State. Now, that has them going 10-2 on the year. Really good year for Oregon, 10-2. Next, Utah. Utah had a great year last year. They beat USC twice. They're the back-to-back Pac-12 champs. It would be fitting for them to win the Pac-12 to close out the Pac-12's history with a three-peat. They have them going 8-4 here, 15th overall team, offense 12, defense 22, pretty well-rounded team, ranked 27 overall strength of schedule, so pretty good strength of schedule. Obviously, we don't know if Cam Rising is going to play this coming week starting out the year. That's a big question mark versus Florida. What's his health? How's his leg doing? Backup got hurt, so they could potentially be down to their third-string quarterback versus Florida. but I have really high expectations for Utah nonetheless. Let's get started breaking them down. Kyle Whittingham, great coach, highly underrated. But next year they'll be off to the Big 12. Let's see what they have for 2023. Florida, I'm picking them to win, rising second-string quarterback or third-string quarterback, whoever they trot out, win. At Baylor, win. That's a pretty good out-of-conference game too. Weber State, win. UCLA, win. Oregon State, win. Cal, win. USC, I had that as a loss. But, I would not be surprised for them to beat the Trojans again. But as of right now, I have that as a loss. Oregon loss, so back-to-back losses there. It's kind of a tough run on their schedule. But I have them finishing out the year strong. So Arizona State, win. At Washington, win. At Arizona, win. And then finishing the year beating Deion Sanders' team with a win. So I have the Utes going 10-2, another strong season in the Pac-12. And then they'll be off to the Big 12. Next, we have the Washington Huskies. They have them projected to go 9-3 or 8-4. 17th best team, offense 7, defense 50, strength of schedule 44. So Penix led the league, well, not the league, led college football in passing last year. He had like 4,700 yards passing. They had a really good year. Washington's obviously off to the Big Ten along with UCLA, USC, and Oregon. So let's see how they'll finish out this year. Boise State, that's a really good out-of-conference game right there. I have them beating Boise State, beating Tulsa. At Michigan State, that's a win. Cal, win. At Arizona, win. Oregon, win. Arizona State, win. At Stanford, win. So at that point, they'd be 8-0. They'd be really highly ranked going into the very last portion of their schedule, which is where it gets tough. USC loss. Utah lost. Back-to-back losses, but they rebound. They beat at Oregon State and beat Washington State. Another Pac-12 team finishing the year 10-2. The Pac-12 is loaded this year. Very top-heavy, great teams. And then the bottom half, not so much. Next team, let's look at Oregon State. So their new quarterback is DJU, transferring over from Clemson. That's a pretty good pickup for them, and he's massive. He's like 9 feet tall, 390 pounds. It's going to be hard to tackle him. And the Pac-12, they have some good defenses, and they have some awful ones. But the Ducks last year, the Beavers last year had a really good year, finished the year with 10 wins. They're projected to go 8-4 right now. 24th ranked team, offense 35, defense 26, strength of schedule 65. So not too bad there. So let's get started. San Jose State, win. UC Davis, that'll be a win. San Diego State, win. At Washington State, that'll be a win. So they're 4-0 going into Utah. I have them losing versus Utah. And then coming back, beating at Cal, beating UCLA, and then win at Arizona, win at Colorado, beating Stanford, and then finishing out the year where it gets tough again for them, losing to Washington and losing at Oregon, but still finishing the year 9-3 and again going into a bowl game to potentially get 10 wins. Great back-to-back years for the Beavers, and it's a shame that they have no home going into next year because their football team is actually doing pretty decent. Next is the UCLA Bruins under Chip Kelly. They don't have a starting quarterback yet, but they do have Dante Moore. He's a 5-star quarterback on the roster. So they have some good options there. Now they have them projecting going 8-4, 31st ranked team, offense 13, defense 66. So pretty tailored towards the offense, 64 schedule ranking. So pretty easy. Let's get started looking at how they'll do. We have Coastal Carolina win, at San Diego State win. Looks like San Diego State plays a lot of Pac-12 teams this year. NC Central, that's obviously going to be a win. I have Utah beating the Bruins, but I have the Bruins coming back, beating Washington State, losing at Oregon State. Oregon State's a tough team, and they're going to beat the Bruins there. But turning around, beating Stanford, beating Colorado, winning at Arizona. But then they'll lose to Arizona State. They'll probably lose to USC. But they'll beat Cal. So I have the Bruins going 8-4. A pretty good year since obviously they have a new quarterback, new running back, so they lost some key pieces from last year, but Chip Kelly knows how to score, knows how to move the ball. Next team that we're going to be looking at here is Washington State. Last year, they went, 7-6. Their coaches, I think his name is Jake Dicker. Pretty decent team, they have them going 6-6, so finishing 500, getting a bowl game. 62nd ranked team, offense 58, defense 41, strength of schedule 57. So they're a so-so team, about a 500 team. But let's kind of see how this year should pan out. So Colorado State, they'll win there. Wisconsin, really good out of conference matchup there. Wisconsin with Luke Fickell, they're going to be really good with Phil Longo calling plays. Wisconsin will win that game. So Washington State loses there. They'll beat Northern Colorado. They'll lose at Oregon State, I'm thinking. They'll lose versus the Bruins. And they'll lose versus Arizona. That's kind of an up-and-coming team with Jed Fish there. They'll lose to Oregon, so they're kind of on a 4-game losing streak there. Then things get a little easier. They'll win at Arizona. They'll beat Stanford. Everybody beats Stanford. They'll beat Cal. They'll beat Colorado. And then I think they'll lose at Washington to finish the year. Hopefully that's not the final time those two teams play during the regular season. But I have the Washington State Cougars going 6-6, so still getting a bowl game, so good for them. Next, we have Arizona. Now, Jed Fish is there. He's a good he's a good play caller. He's a good recruiter. He called plays at Georgia. He called plays at Miami. They have them going 5-7, 64 team, offense 29, defense just horrible. 119, 46 schedule ranking. They start out the year at Northern Arizona. They'll win that. Mississippi State, they go down to the SEC. They're at Mississippi State. They'll lose that versus Zach Arnett's team. Then they follow that up with Utah. They'll win. They'll beat Stanford, lose to Washington, lose to USC. So what? They beat Northern Arizona, lost to Mississippi State, beat UTEP, beat Stanford. They'll lose to Washington, lose to USC. They'll beat Washington State. That's what I'm thinking. They'll lose to Oregon State, lose to UCLA. At Colorado, they'll win. They'll lose to Utah, and then they'll lose to Arizona State. And they'll be off to the Big 12 next year. They'll be going 5-8 this year. So just missing a bowl game, but Jed Fish will have a couple things cooking there. Next, we'll be looking at Cal. Their coach is Justin Wilcox. Their quarterback, Sam Jackson. Cal, they're one of those other Pac-12 teams that has no home going into next year. They have them going 5-7 this coming year, 58th overall team, offense 75, defense 47, 23rd strength of schedule, so pretty difficult scheduling. Northern Texas, they'll win there. They'll lose to Auburn, really good at a conference game. They will beat Idaho, lose to Washington, win at Arizona State. Then I think things will kind of get rough. It gets really hard for their schedule. They'll lose Oregon State. They'll lose at Utah, lose to the USC Trojans, lose at Oregon, lose to Washington State. They'll beat Stanford. Like I said, everybody beats Stanford. And then they'll lose to Chip Kelly's Bruins to finish the year. I have them going 4-8. Not a very good season at all. They will miss a bowl game, but they have a pretty tough schedule for kind of how their team is built. It's not a very good team, and it's a pretty tough schedule. Next, we'll be looking at Arizona State. So they have them going 5-7, 65th best team, offense 50, defense 91, so pretty bad numbers, 30 strength of schedule. So their new coach, Kenny Dillingham, he was the offensive coordinator for Oregon. Their quarterback, they just named that Jaden Rashada, the freshman, will be starting there. He's the one who was committed to Miami and then left and went to Florida for $11 million NIL, and then there was a disaster there, and then he went to Arizona State. So the Sun Devils kind of have an interesting story with him. I'm assuming he got named starter as part of his deal to come there. I don't know that, but they're starting a true freshman. So I don't think that's going to necessarily set them up for success this year, but let's take a look at their schedule. Southern Utah, win. Oklahoma State, loss. That's pretty good at a conference game there. Fresno State, win. And then it's going to get tough right there. So they're going to lose to USC. I think they'll lose at Cal. They'll lose to Colorado. Deion Sanders will finally get one there. They'll lose at Washington, really tough game there. And then lose at, then they'll lose to Washington State. They'll lose at Utah. I think they'll beat the Bruins, though. So they'll be on a loss streak, and then things will finally start clicking there at the tail end of the season. So they'll beat UCLA, but then they'll lose to Oregon, and they'll finish out the year beating their in-state rival Arizona, finishing the year 4-8, and then both Arizona teams will be off to the Big 12 next year. So I said everybody beat Stanford. So let's kind of take a look at what they have Stanford doing. They have Stanford going 3-9, so doing horrible. They have them as the 96th best team. Offense 113, that's awful. Defense 73, that's not good. 35th schedule ranking, so you kind of know that things aren't going to pan out very well. Starting out the year at Hawaii, I think they'll out-physical them. They'll win. And then at USC, obviously a loss. Sacramento State, they should win that, but they're not even really favored. It's a 53%, which is pretty bad. But I think they'll win that. And then it's just going to get awful. I think they'll lose to Arizona, lose to Oregon, lose at Colorado, so Deion Sanders gets another one. They'll lose at UCLA, lose to Washington State, lose to Oregon State, lose to Cal, lose to Notre Dame. So their final year in the Pac-12 is probably going to be their worst year in forever. I have them going 2-10. David Shaw's gone. Troy Taylor's the new coach. Complete turnover. Shaw was there, things didn't work out for him in the very end, but I think they got a lot on their plate. But at least they have something to try to play for, and that's trying to find a new home for the team. But they'll go 2-10. That's what I see them doing. Last but not least, prime time coming into the Power 5. Deion Sanders, now the head coach of Colorado. He had his son Sanders transfer in, so he'll be the starter there. He had a really good transfer portal class. He pretty much completely turned over the whole roster, and he'll keep doing that. He pretty much kicked everybody off the team. But when you look at the rankings, you can see why. So they have them going 3-9, 99th best roster, offense 88, defense 108. Just horrible numbers there. Strength of schedule 25. All those horrible numbers and a pretty tough strength of schedule. So let's see how Sanders might do. Now, at TCU, I have him losing that. They'll have a lot of kinks to work out, a lot of new starters coming in there. And then Nebraska, Matt Rule. To me, I think Sanders is going to take that one. Now, I'm not confident in that, but I think Matt Rule is completely changing over his roster also. And his offense is kind of a slow, grinded out, fullback kind of offense. I think it's going to take a little time to get those bodies. So I think Sanders might squeak one by Nebraska, just because Nebraska is also in a complete rebuild. And then he'll win Colorado State. People will be talking about Sanders. Oh man, he's 2-1. This is great. But then he's going to lose at Oregon, lose to USC. I think he'll win at Arizona State and win at Stanford because everybody beats Stanford. Things will be looking really good, and then it's just going to fall off the map right there. He's going to lose versus the Bruins, lose at Oregon State, lose to Arizona, lose at Washington State, lose at Utah. So finishing the year on a 5-game losing streak, but finishing 4-8. Colorado won 1 game last year. So if Sanders wins 2 games, he's doubled the winning for the team. So no matter what he does, he just has to win 2 to do better. He just has to win 1 game to basically just stay parallel and the team not to be any worse. But I think he'll get 3 to 4 wins, and that's pretty good. Since where Colorado was, it was a complete disaster of a roster. He has to completely change things over. So that's the projections that I have for the Pac-12, final year of the Pac-12. It is a sad thing. This is the last season that we'll ever be looking at the Pac-12 this way. I have a lot of top-heavy teams. I have the Trojans doing great, the Ducks doing great, the Utes doing great, Washington, Oregon State, and the Bruins all having pretty decent years. Maybe one of them will get into the Final Four. I think USC, if they get to the Pac-12 championship versus one of these other teams, I think they very well might lose. It's just that defense has to get a lot better because it was awful. But anyways, guys, that's a breakdown of the Pac-12. Hit that like button and subscribe. Thanks.